Hey, it's the Get Out of Debt Guy podcast. I'm Steve Rhode, the original Get Out of Debt Guy. And joining me, as always, is the new Get Out of Debt Guy, Damon Day. Say hello, Damon.
Hello, Damon.
Let's talk about fear, because there's a lot of it out there when it comes to money. But what gets really tricky and what gets a lot of people, it's the things that people choose to be afraid of. Now, some folks will miss one payment, just one payment. And suddenly they're spiraling, heart pounding, mind racing. Sure, the world is about to collapse, but their perfect payment streak just took a little hit, that's all. Others will dodge phone calls, lose sleep, and live in constant state of panic over a debt collector, like they're being hunted by the IRS and the FBI at the same time. But here's the thing, neither of those fears is helping you. Fear of missing a payment? That's just shame in a different outfit. And fear of the debt collector? That's often louder than the actual threat. Most of the time, they've got less power than you think, but your imagination fills in the rest. And while you're busy being terrified of the wrong things, the real dangers like draining your retirement or making emotional decisions out of panic, those sneak right past you. So today, Damon and I are going to dismantle those fears and show you where your focus should be, because being one day late on a payment is not the end of the world. Being 10 years late on facing your debt, oh my God, that's the real risk. So let's get into it, Damon. People afraid of missing a payment.
Yes. Yeah, I came up with this topic last week. I wanted to do the podcast on it after a call with a client. And when I got off the phone, I'd realized how much time I'd actually spent going over the ins and outs of and I'm doing air quotes, the ramifications of missing a payment.
He's doing air quotes. I'm looking at him.
I was doing air quotes. And sometimes, I have to stop and remember that I've been dealing with this stuff for 25 years, right? And a lot of my clients, they may have never missed a payment in their life. So when I'm talking to clients about, oh, you just missed a payment and we can negotiate the debt, or missed a payment because we know for sure you're going to file bankruptcy. So, it doesn't make any sense to keep making these payments. And I have to remind myself that this is not normal for most people. And I think it's really important that people understand the potential ramifications of, missing payments, but also the ramifications of making payments in certain situations.
Yep.
And I just came to, to that realization, I guess, not that I haven't had it before, but that there's so much misinformation out there. For instance, even when you're going to file bankruptcy, I've had conversations with people before where say, okay, we know we're filing bankruptcy inside of 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Well, we can let these payments go right now. We know these things are going to get discharged.
What do you mean?
Then,
stop making payments? Oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah, and people, like, sometimes they conjure up this image like they're going to get served a lawsuit in the next 30 days. And so we wanted to do this show on going over the ins and outs of what really happens if you miss a payment. Should you be worried about it, not worried about it? And, the biggest thing for me is, remember, when you miss a payment, I say credit card payment, that's not going to hurt your credit. And everybody's going to say, what do you mean? If I miss a payment, it will hurt my credit. No. When you miss a payment, the next day, nothing changes. Can you hear that in my ear, Steve? I got an alarm going off on something.
Oh, no, that's an alarm in your head.
Oh, it's an alarm. It's telling me I have a podcast with Steve right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the easy thing is that you and I both know that, I'm turning on my do not disturb, thank you for reminding me, that if we were living through this, or when we did both live through this, the initial time, sure, we had all the same emotions, all the panic and everything else. But knowing what we both know now, after all the decades of experience, it's like a nothing burger.
Yeah.
You miss payment? All right, no problem. We'll deal with it.
Well, going back to what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by my reminder that I have to be on a podcast with you right now. Remember, when you miss a payment and you're a day behind or 2 days behind, there's nothing on your credit report that reports 1 day behind, right?
No.
Everybody knows, you're going to get a 30-day late, okay? You are not 30 days late until you miss your second payment. At that point, you might have to worry. But if you're at a point where you're choosing between the mortgage and the minimum payment due on a credit card today, or I need to buy groceries, or I have a minimum payment due today, right? If you don't make that minimum payment, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're probably going to get a $30 late fee on that card because you missed it by a few days. And in most cases, a week later, you call them up. Hey, I brain farted. I'm sorry. I totally missed it. I thought I paid it. I apologize. I caught it back up. Hey, by the way, could you potentially give me a courtesy waiver on that $30 fee? It's totally my fault.
No problem. We got
and
you.
Most of the time, unless you've done it several times already, you can get that courtesy waiver. So,
well, here's the funny thing, Damon, that I have seen people lose their credit card and all the reward points with an American Express card because the dude called up all pissed off that they wouldn't give him a courtesy waiver because he was late.
Yeah.
Right? What he should have said was, I'm sorry, no problem. Instead, he lost his card, all the, 10,000, 20,000 reward points, all that other stuff, just because he was emotionally tense.
Well, it's in the name. It's a courtesy waiver.
Right.
Not a mandatory waiver. So I'm saying you can ask and you may get it.
Right.
But it's not a requirement. But even then, if the worst case scenario is you get a $30 late fee, it is what it is. And I'm not saying just start missing payments willy-nilly, but if you have a strategy and you have a plan, and that plan doesn't call for being current on your payments, there's not a whole lot the creditors can do to you, usually within the first 6 months minimum of not making payments. You're not going to miss a payment and a process server is going to be at your door next week. They're not going to come in your house and take your TVs and the couches and all the stuff or serve you with the lawsuit until you get significantly behind. And there's times where you can get a plan in place and get things figured out, whether it's filing bankruptcy, whether it's negotiating the principal down and getting on a new payment plan, whether it's negotiating the interest rates down, getting on a new payment plan. Missing a payment should not be feared if it's part of a strategic plan.
I had a client once that missed their payment to Sears, right on the Sears credit card.
So you are the original get out of debt guy.
I am.
Clearly a long time ago.
Yeah, and they bought it through a catalog.
I was going to say, and they got the Sears catalog right there.
But they were so afraid because they had missed that one payment. They wanted to know if Sears was going to come to their door and take their used mattress.
Well, Sears might not, but Roebuck probably would.
Yeah. Yeah, Roebuck was an asshole, but Sears was okay. Nobody wants your used mattress.
For our younger listeners, they're like, what are these two old guys talking about? Who's Roebuck? Yeah, so the bottom line, though, is on the payments, don't get it all worked up in your head of what's going to happen. Worst case scenario, you're going to get some courtesy reminders, maybe a text message, maybe an email, maybe a phone call. But none of this is going to hurt your credit until you get significantly further past due. Missing your payment by a couple of days, it's fine. Might have to pay a penalty on that. Not a big deal.
Yeah, they may not waive it. That's okay.
Yeah.
Now, going behind intentionally or strategically because you're doing that with a plan. This is why when people work with you, Damon, I forgot to say earlier, you can find Damon at damonday.com, DAMONDAY.com. But when people work with you, and part of that plan is, hey, you can't afford the payment. You might have to fall behind. But don't worry. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what the reality is. Then they're at least mentally prepared. Now, and that leads us to the second part, is when the collector starts calling. Now, my favorite debt collector story is, I used to live near a major credit card company collection center, and they invited me to come visit one day. And so I went to the address, and it was in a nondescript industrial park with no signage or anything else. At the front door, there was a security guard, and I thought the guard was there to prevent people from getting in the building. By the time I left, I realized the guard was there to keep the debt collectors from leaving. Because none of them liked their job. They and this was 2 decades ago, but they were sitting in front of computers that were automatically dialing the next number and measuring how long they were on the phone and how many promises they got to pay.
Yeah.
And what I learned from every one of them, and what I learned from being in terrible debt myself way back then, was just make the debt collector your friend. They don't enjoy calling you as much as you don't like them calling you either. So let's all just get through this. Don't be afraid of the debt collector. The worst debt collector story I ever had was a woman who said a debt collector called and he was a real jerk and he got my 5-year-old son on the phone and he asked my son if he had a crayon and he told my son to write his telephone number on the wall. But that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. I think my favorite story has to be, this was years ago on a private student loan. And this was about 150, 200,000 debt. And I've been dealing with this debt collector. His client had purchased the debt and he was a nice enough guy, but he just kept refusing to go down to a reasonable number as far as a settlement with payments where the client could afford. The client didn't make a lot of money. And I'd already worked out the maximum they could get from her, even if they filed a lawsuit and then we did nothing. And then they garnish her wages. And we just let them garnish her wages if we were going to let it get that far. It was a very small amount of
something.
Yeah, it was a small amount of money compared to what they were, and I'm doing air quotes again, demanding.
Yep.
So it's like, legally you're going to get significantly less than you're demanding. So, and I'm explaining all this over multiple conversations over many, many months, which actually turned into many, many years. And we touch base every couple of months. He would reach out and, I think it was sticking at like 70. It was like over 100,000 they wanted. And it was like, there's just no way the client can do that. Well, the client did have access to some money where we could do a lump sum, but it had to have been a more reasonable lump sum. I can't remember what it was. I think it was about 50 grand that they were able to do. And it was about a 30% offer, maybe a little bit less than that. And I was just like, look, this is what we're willing to do. You and I both know that this is the best deal you're going to get. Legally, you're not going to get any more from her. And she was actually nearing retirement as well. So once she got to retirement, they were going to be getting nothing. So I ended up just continuing to kind of banter back and forth with him for years. Every couple of years, or every couple of months, we'd touch, but he'd call me and I'd have the same conversation with him and he wouldn't budge. And eventually, we did this dance so long that he went beyond the statute of limitations. And after he got significantly behind it, like at least a year, that's my buffer. And for those of you that don't know, the statute of limitations is basically how long an entity has to come after you and sue you if you don't make a payment.
Right.
I didn't know if he wasn't aware of it or what, but he called me up one day, and this was like, I hadn't talked to him for at least a year, and same song and dance. And I said, by the way, are you aware of when she made the last payment on this account? He goes, looking it up. And I'm like, you're dead now, right? She's not giving you anything. So, I mean, you can keep calling me if you want, but the offer that we had, that's gone. It's gone. And so I never heard from him again after that. But I was just like, sometimes these guys get so stubborn, he waltzed his way right into nothing. And the client never had to pay anything on that debt. She got out of it for nothing. It's like, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game.
I had a collector call on a client one time, and she goes, I understand they're a client of yours now. Yes. And we need to know exactly what their income and expenses are. And I said, they just became a client. I've got them tracking their expenses for the next 30 days. We're going to figure out exactly what their expenses are. And then I'm happy to share that with you. She goes, what? You have them writing down exactly what they spend for groceries and milk and stuff? I said, yeah, we need to know exactly what the numbers are. She said, that's ridiculous. I said, oh, hold on. I got a budget.
Yeah.
I said, you just have a piece of paper you need to fill out. Is that right? Yes. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And sometimes if you play your cards right, the collector will tell you the right numbers to put in the
Yeah.
budget to get the deal that you're looking for.
Oh, you've had that happen. I remember that.
I have had that happen. And it's like playing a game. It's like, I'm feeling maybe 500 lower, 400 sounds good. But you brought up something earlier, where you were talking about, we were talking about the ramifications of not making a payment, but then you
Yeah.
brought up the ramifications of continuing to make a payment that you can't afford.
Right.
And this is the issue by making decisions based on emotion or fear, and fear is just usually a lack of understanding, which is where the fear comes in. The lack of, or the unknown is where the fear comes from. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately what most people do is they just continue to make payments that they can't afford, like Steve alluded to, draining your savings, or just making the payments because that's the easier thing to do in the moment, because the tough thing to do is face that fear of the unknown. And so continuing to make payments that you can't afford has much greater consequences than not making the payment and coming up with a solution to fix that problem before you drain your savings, you
Right.
pull the money out of your 401k, you go try to get another consolidation loan to keep limping along and making minimum payments, and then all you're doing is getting deeper in debt. So it's super critical to take a step back, come up with a strategy and a plan, and then understand that sometimes strategically defaulting, and again, it's in the name, strategically defaulting. There's a reason we're defaulting, and that's because the result of the default, the result of the default.
Yep.
The result of the default is going to put you in a better position than the result of the payment. So
Yeah.
there is a strategy behind it, and once you have that strategy, just know that missing a payment that puts you closer to a resolution is better than just continuing to make payments that you can't afford. So don't be afraid to miss a payment if you understand why you're missing the payment.
Yeah. The key is to have a plan.
Yeah, you don't miss a payment and then not understand. If you're going to miss a payment, understand why you're missing that payment and make sure
I
it
would
makes
much
sense for
rather
you.
see somebody strategically default than unconsciously not default. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Instead, I have watched, I've lost count. I'm sure you have too, of people who've just spent themselves down to the last penny and eliminated all their options because they were afraid of what their credit report or, oh my God, a debt collector might call,
Yeah, because they have this window where they can strategically default, and if they don't use that window, they run out of everything. All their assets are gone, their savings is gone, everything. And then they're not going to strategically default. They're going to just default
Right.
because they don't have any more money to make the payment.
That's just defaulting without a plan.
Yeah, don't wait until you just don't have any more money to give them. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do. But again, the point is, when you miss a payment, nothing really happens. You have time after that. You have time to figure it out. I have clients where it's like, okay, my payment on this loan is due tomorrow and it's $900 and I don't really have it. And it's like, okay, don't pay it. And then they freak out. Okay, look, here's what happens. If you don't pay it, that gives us at least a month to strategize and figure out what we're going to do. That $900 stays in your account. If we end up deciding that bankruptcy at some point makes sense, you're never going to pay that back. If we end up deciding that it's better to negotiate that loan, you're not going to pay anywhere near that back, and it won't be for some time in the future. If for some reason we decide that, you know what, we can Dave Ramsey our way out of this or whatever, and we need to catch that up, again, we have a month to come up with this plan. If we need to catch it up, fine. Then you pay the $900 3 weeks from now, right? When we decide, okay, yeah, you need to pay it, you pay it. Maybe you have to pay a late penalty. Maybe you get it waived. But so when in doubt, I say, when in doubt, don't make the payment. If you think there's a chance you could go bankrupt or negotiate, when in doubt, don't make the payment. You keep the cash. Because once you give them the money, you're never going to get it back.
It's going to be another month. Right.
Yeah, you give them the money, and then we spend the next 2 or 3 weeks deciding bankruptcy makes sense. You file bankruptcy, you lose that $900. Yep. You don't give them the money, and we decide bankruptcy makes sense. Now you can use that $900 to pay part of the bankruptcy attorney's fee. You could put that money to good use. So it's better to miss the payment, take the time, buy yourself some time to come up with that plan, and then catch the payment up if you need to. But if we decide not to, now you don't have to like worry about that money's gone. You still have it. You don't have to give it up. So
Yeah, you got to remember the debt collector's not trying to coax you into making the payment because that's the smartest financial move for you. That's how they're being judged. They're doing what's best for them.
The debt collector doesn't call up and go, hey, have you met with a bankruptcy attorney? Have you thought about, maybe not paying us because this is a big chunk of your monthly income?
Yeah,
Maybe it might be better.
Sense.
I think you're drowning here. I think you need to stop paying us. I don't think the debt collector has ever said that in the history of debt collection.
Now, I remember back in the late 80s, 89 or 90, whenever I was hitting the fan, just being scared witless when a debt collector would call or a notice would come in the mail. And then one day or one night after not being able to sleep, not yet again, and just being so just dragged out, burned out, I just remember thinking to myself, I'm going to flip this script. Instead of avoiding the debt collector calls, I'm going to answer them with a smile. And I am going to make every debt collector that calls my friend. And I did that. And there were times when debt collectors would go, Steve, you really don't need to do anything right now. I'll call you next month. Don't worry about it.
Once in a while, you can get that out of them. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing is, too, if a debt collector's calling and you don't answer the phone, should you worry about that?
No.
Because guess what? They'll call you tomorrow.
Yeah, it just goes back in the auto dialer. Or you just let it go to voicemail.
Well, a lot of people worry, oh my gosh, if I don't pick up the phone, they're going to get so mad and sue me. And it doesn't work that way. The person calling you doesn't make the decision about whether or not you're going to get sued. Now, if you're irate on the phone and you're rude you piss them off, now that might get kicked up higher up and then somebody else can make the decision to do that. So there's never a situation to get on the phone with a debt collector and let your emotions get the better of you, because that won't help you. I would if you can't have a civil conversation, I'd rather you just ignore the phone call.
Exactly. Worse things are going to happen if you answer the phone and you're a jerk. I always say that's, blaming the debt collector for your situation is like blaming Ronald McDonald for a bad Happy Meal.
Yeah.
It's just totally misdirected. The debt collector is just an hourly person being forced to call you because that's what their job is and that's what the computer's telling you to do. They're not judging you. It's not personal. They're not making a judgment against you. Nothing. It's just a transaction. So,
well, think about this too. Just boil it down to a human level. You have somebody calling you. They probably hate their job. You mentioned the story about the security guard there to keep the debt collectors in, because debt collection has one of the highest turnovers in any industry out there. I mean, it sucks. It's a horrible job. I would never do it. And so, you got people that are probably getting yelled at and screamed at day in and day out, hung up on, and then all of a sudden they get somebody on the phone that's nice to them. That's like, oh my gosh, I really like this person. If there happens to be anything that they can do, they will tend to try to do that to help you out, especially if that leads to a potential resolution, which gets a feather in their cap as well. But if you scream at them and piss them off.
Oh yeah, that's nothing good's going to happen there.
Yeah.
But Damon, with your personality, I can remember just lots of stories of you talking to debt collectors on clients' behalf and having the debt collector tell you, here's what I could do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got a lot of debt collectors where I've got their personal phone number. We're friends on Facebook, so because the calls are recorded when you call the official line.
Yeah.
But a Facebook chat, I have debt collectors that I've formed relationships with. I could send a Facebook, I could slide into their DM and be like, all right, I got this client. Here's what the skinny is on that. And we kind of do an off books kind of, here's what's going on. And then we call on the official line, the next day or whatever. And, but that's like what you were mentioning when I had that one time where we were having to fill out this budget and the collector was literally coaching me on the right numbers to put into their form so that when they submitted it, it would give me the outcome that I was looking for the client.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen because I was an asshole to the collector.
No, not at all.
And I am in a pretty unique position versus like a consumer, because this isn't my debt that I'm
Right.
talking to them about. So this is like, I call it the Jerry Maguire approach. Hey, help me help you, right? In the bathroom scene with Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah.
Help me help you. And I can't tell you the number of times, like, I'll talk to a client, and not often, but there'll be some clients that just get so upset about the injustice of what has happened to them, and I get it. I totally get it, with the credit cards and the interest rates, and they just want to stick it to the creditor. And I'm like, that's the wrong approach. We can't, that's not how it's going to work. And it's like, you're sitting there going, I'm so glad you're not going to be on the phone trying to negotiate this yourself, because you are too close to it. You're too emotional about it. And one thing is going to set you off, and that's going to blow up the whole deal. Which is why my number one rule with clients is,
Don't.
if you want me to talk to the creditor, you are not allowed to talk to the creditor. Let me do it. I can't have two chiefs, especially when one chief is very emotionally charged.
That reminded me of a story. I had a collector I called on behalf of a client, and he goes, Steve, it's funny that you called me because I talked to the client just yesterday. And the client, I was like, nothing good comes of that. He goes, and the client got all upset and started yelling at me and said, if you don't like it, sue me. So I said,
perfect.
So what'd you do? He goes, yeah, I sued him.
Yeah. I sent it out to the referral for our attorney, so they should be expecting the process server in a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people don't understand is that, credit card companies, they just dump your name in a hopper. It's not like they're making a special effort. So there's no need to invite that crap.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could tell you a few stories from back in the day when, a client got on the phone with the creditor, even if it wasn't the client intentionally doing so. They just happened to pick up the phone, even though I said, hey, look, don't pick up the phone. If you do happen to answer the phone and it's the collector, just hang up. Like, don't say anything. Just click. I don't care. I'd rather you just click than say something.
Right.
Whatever you say can and will be used against you in a court of law kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a client one time that was talking. It's a student loan deal, and we were in the middle of negotiating it, and the collector had called the client's number. And they're not stupid. If they can get the client on the phone and see what information they can get out of them and then compare it to the information I'm giving them.
All right.
It strengthens their case, especially. So anyway, the client calls me. He's like, oh yeah, I talked to the collector yesterday. I'm like, what did you say? And he's like, well, I just got mad and I hung up. And I'm like, oh great. So now here's my problem. I don't know exactly what was said. So now I'm having to tiptoe. It makes my job a lot harder because I don't know now what this collector knows. And I don't want to ruin my reputation by getting caught in a fib on behalf of the client when the client's the one that outed the fib. And in this particular case, I remember I'm talking to the collector, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like I had offered like $30,000 on this debt, and they owed like 90. And the collector goes, well, your client told me that he had $60,000. Now, here's the problem. I knew the client had $60,000.
Yep.
And unless the creditor just got extremely lucky, how did they guess the number that the client actually had?
Yep.
And so now I'm stuck because now I have to get off that phone before I can go any further and get to the bottom of what was actually said. And so I'm like, now I have to play dumb. I'm like, what? They told you they had 60? No, because I'd already offered 30 and told them that was all they had. So now I'm looking like I'm trying to screw them. So I'm like, no, not unless they won the lottery yesterday. I made up some excuse. I get off the phone. I call the client back and I go, did you tell them you had $60,000? And she goes, well, no. So what happened was I was upset and they wouldn't go off their number. And I got mad and I said, what's this going to take? $60,000? So the client's version is she just threw that out like it was a random number, and she was like flabbergasted that it was going to take that much.
She probably said, all I've got is $60,000.
Yeah, but in the creditor's notes, she has $60,000. So that clearly made my job easier to get a lower number when she's so it's just if you can't be calm, cool, and collected on the phone with the collector, it's better just not to talk to them because you can make the situation worse. But missing some payments and ignoring creditors is not going to hurt you. Definitely not going to hurt you any more than getting on the phone with them and saying some things that you shouldn't be saying.
Right.
But yeah, I was still able to get that deal. I think we ended up settling that one at about 45, which was a miracle considering the creditor was convinced that they had $60,000, and they were correct.
Yeah.
That she did have $60,000, but it's like, hey, I'm really good, but don't work against me, please.
I mean, when you think about how many people could actually negotiate their own amicable divorce, right? The number is probably pretty small. It's like somebody being emotionally involved in their financial situation, making the right decisions and negotiating their best way to handle their debt. The numbers of somebody able to do that are really tiny.
Yeah, and collectors will find that crack in the armor, and they'll use that. They'll poke at the emotions. You're trying to negotiate, and they'll be saying things like, well, you did borrow the 60 grand, you did go to school, you did get your degree or whatever, you did buy that or you did buy this. Well, you're just a deadbeat. You're not going to uphold your end of the obligation. My client's the one taking the haircut here. That's not fair. And they'll just poke at that emotion. They can't take the same argument with like me or you. I'm like,
right.
No, I didn't get the degree. It's not my money. No, I'm trying to help you. My client can't afford what you want. It sucks, but that wasn't their plan. But this is where we're at. And so now we got to come to some resolution that your client can live with and my client can afford.
As I said to a client once, why is the debt collector always pushing my buttons and making me feel bad? First off, you're making yourself feel bad. But secondly, I told her, I've never had a debt collector who was ever successful by calling up somebody and saying, hey, let me take you out to dinner.
Yeah. Well, they'll try. They'll try the nice tack. They'll try the good cop, bad cop. They'll try to tell you when you say, I don't have the money, they'll try to convince you that just stop paying other people, right?
Right,
They'll tell
you,
well, you're paying these other credit cards, why don't you go get a loan? It's like, well, I think about getting a loan, except you got all those negatives on my credit report for the last 6 months. So my score is 500. So who do you think I'm going to get a loan from now?
Right.
So you tell the collector, it's your fault I can't get a loan and pay you back.
Yeah, this is all your fault. You lent me the money to begin with. This is all your fault.
See how far you get with that argument. I would pay you back, but you guys screwed up my credit, so therefore I can't. Which is got a lot of nuggets of truth in that argument, actually.
Speaking of nuggets of truth, the truth is that this is the end of the podcast.
Yeah, and the big takeaway is, don't be afraid to miss a payment if it's done with a strategy behind it.
Yeah, and don't be a dick.
Well, that would be a good tip.
Yeah, if the debt collector's calling you, either don't answer the phone. Well, you got 3 options. Don't answer the phone. Get in touch with Damon immediately and get something working. Or number 3, just don't be a dick to the debt collector. There's no need to do that.
Honestly, you don't want to even be on the phone with the debt collector until you know what your goal is.
Yeah, what the plan is. You have
a plan and a strategy. Because, if you're going to file bankruptcy, talking to the debt collector is a complete waste of your time.
Right.
If you're going to settle your debt, talking to the collector within the first couple months, complete waste of your time. If you want to negotiate a new payment plan, talking to the collector within the first 2 months of your delinquency, waste of time. If you're trying to get back on a payment plan with them immediately, then talking to the collector will be a good thing. But you have to know what your overall plan is so you know what information you should even be telling the collector. You don't want to just get on with the collector cold and, I'm sorry, I don't have the money, I don't know what to do, when they're going to be suggesting all kinds of things that you can do, and you're not going to know how to respond to that because you don't know what you want yet.
I got one more situation. Getting on the phone with a collector and making a promise to pay without looking at your total situation. It doesn't do any good to make a promise to pay one creditor if you can't deal with all of them.
Yeah.
You're throwing money away.
And a lot of people will do that because they just can't get the guy off the phone or the gal, whoever. Like they'll just be like, oh my God, he just kept asking for a payment. Can you $50? Can you do this? So I just set it up so I can get off the phone. And so that was done in panic. And now you've committed yourself to $100 or $50. And the right thing to do might have just been to hang up. Right.
Yeah,
but now it costs you $100 because you answered the phone.
I'm going to transfer you to Mr. Click.
Click. Mr. Click. I like that one.
All right,
Stand by for Mr. Click.
I will see you.
Peace.